Good. All right, I'll call to order the Esticated Traffic and Public Safety Committee. Can I get the roll call, please, Elena?
Commissioner Dolzel,
Here. Nicely done.
thank you. Commissioner Litke. Here. Commissioner Parson,
Here.
Commissioner Dobbs,
Here.
Commissioner Owens,
Here.
Commissioner Seberg, no,
Sedgberg.
Segeberg,
Sedgberg.
Sedgberg. Okay. And then Chair Moriarty.
Here. All right, do we have anything for community comments?
There is no one online. Did you
Okay.
want to speak? Okay,
No, we show no address.
you what?
Right to be satisfied.
She's gonna want to speak.
Okay, okay.
Was Carolyn?
Yeah, I think she was.
Okay. Go ahead, fill something out there, Carolyn, if you wanna.
You
Okay,
you don't need to. You can use the council one if you want, yeah? No problem.
no problem.
You do not have minutes from your last meeting because your last meeting was a joint meeting with the city council and the council approved those minutes.
Okay.
Cool. So
Okay.
your consent agenda is blank,
Oh, that's right, from last
The
night.
one way I get into the minutes.
right?
We're waiting on you.
You can go ahead and go up to the mic. So you have Carolyn.
Carolyn, yes. Thanks for letting me talk today. I was wondering if I could ask questions a little bit on safety based on some of the council meeting information from last night. Specifically, when the police were saying that with or without the ordinance being passed, that they're still not going to really do a lot of it's going to take a while, whether the ordinance passed or not, to move people along if it was going to be an issue. So knowing that and having the safety committee here, it's a concern. I think it's a concern because it feels like if people are camping wherever they want to camp, and it's going to take a long time to move them along. I think somebody said 72 hours. How does that make it any safer in this situation? Because we already have our ordinance, that whatever ordinance is in place now, which still, my understanding is it's still in place even after July 1st. Why aren't those, or I feel like those ordinances are not going to be adhered to, I guess. So I guess that's my question, if that makes sense.
I can,
You can answer.
yeah, I can try to take that.
Thank you.
Camping ordinance.
I'll give you an answer, and if it's not good enough or if it wasn't clear, let me know. I think I understand what you're asking. So I think what you need to keep in mind is that an ordinance violation is or city ordinance, this is set up as a violation. So if you think about it similar to the vehicle code, if somebody doesn't use their turn signal, a deputy can issue a citation, but not using a turn signal is not something that anybody goes to jail for. So an ordinance violation is similar. So if I wrote you a ticket for not using your turn signal, you could pull out from the traffic stop, make a turn and not use your turn signal again. And my recourse to that is to write you another ticket. If we elevate this to a crime, then misdemeanor and felony crimes are reasons that a deputy could arrest somebody and take them to jail. And so an ordinance violation, the penalty for that is a citation. And so what I was speaking to about how it could take some time is if we had a scenario where we'll just put a a makeshift pallet tent combo thing on the sidewalk. And if we're trying to resolve that situation, a deputy could show up and write somebody a citation. But we're going to want to try to get to the root cause of why this person is putting this structure on the sidewalk and trying to figure out what we can do to resolve that. Because if it's not a crime, we can't take someone to jail. So that's why I was saying it may take a little bit of time connecting someone with services, whether that be someone has issues, addiction to drugs or mental health issues or whatever it may be. Or even, it could just be like a protest type of situation.
Can I ask another question? Based on that, do you know whether or not, since we didn't pass a new ordinance, whether or not what we have in place now is going to be adhered to equally?
I don't think I can answer that fully, and every scenario is going to offer different circumstances. There are some laws that will apply during some circumstances and others that won't. Yeah, I know it was brought up yesterday about criminal activity, right? If we move into criminal activity, then that's a whole new realm, as I just explained, violation versus a crime and what a deputy can do to enforce that.
Jumping on the city council side. So something else to understand in there too is, one is some of the recent Supreme Court rulings make it so we can't criminalize being homeless. And you can't have a stacked set of violations that might lead to a criminal part of it. So you can't go 3 violations means a misdemeanor or something like that. It can't lead to it. That came out of the Grants Pass, Johnson versus Grants Pass case. So those particular things is something you also be considered. Now, as far as our current ordinance, right now, according to what the Boise v. Martin case is, our ordinance is not in alignment with that. We need to work on that. We already know that we need to work on our ordinances, but doesn't mean that there's no laws governing what happens in the city of Estacada. What happens is when a local municipality's ordinances are not considered valid, you have the counties and then the state's statutes and the county's ordinances that then take into play. Those are the ones that the sheriffs would be adhering to, is what those are. So, and correct me if I'm wrong on that one.
That's correct.
Okay. So,
And I guess finally, what from a safety committee standpoint are you guys willing to or are doing or going to put in place anything to help enforce the stuff that we have, the ordinances that we have in place now, if it takes extra time to resolve certain issues different than and above and beyond what the law and the ordinances are now, because we didn't pass a new ordinance?
Okay, I can answer that, I think. I don't know how good the answer is going to be, but I don't know if everyone watched the city council meeting last night. I was present along with Brandy and Carrie, and we all have a lot of things to discuss in regards to that. Having it just for a day, I haven't thought a minute about it since last night. So that's my answer right now. But I think that we do need to discuss ordinance in regards to public safety. Definitely more. I think we can all look at that. I know we have, I think it's Title 8 and some other ones that we need to look at. But thank you.
That's
Yeah,
all.
and I will say this is an advisory board, so anything that they recommend would have to be approved by council. So really the decision-making body in the end is going to be council.
Okay.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anyone else? Just Carolyn? Okay,
There is no one online.
thank you. All right, moving on to presentations and reports. Report from Chief Mendoza. Do you have anything, Chief? Last night was a lot of questions. We appreciate that.
Yeah. I think at this point, we just need to look at what our options are for moving forward and how from the sheriff's office point of view, how the sheriff's office can respond to these, if there are complaints of camping within the city. I had mentioned last night that sheriff's office wanted to have the same response throughout the county, both incorporated areas and within the cities. That way it's consistent for the deputies, right? We have consistent practice. But really for these types of situations, it's usually there are several different types of reasons, or there could be a whole gamut of reasons why somebody is living on the street without a home. And we really try to just reiterate that we really try to help people when we come across them and find solutions for them. So we'll continue working with our partners as we've been doing to try to find solutions. And as this evolves, we'll figure out what will work for Estacada.
And I'm sure you'll be getting a lot more guidance from the undersheriff and sheriff too.
Yes,
sure that's
absolutely.
In the future. Anyone else have any questions for the chief? Anyone?
I have a question.
Okay.
So we are an advisory committee to the council, but I think maybe we could advise the council that maybe we need to find a way, either a person that's what they do, or a committee that's what they do, where they can help kind of follow these things along. So like, say something happens, and somebody needs resources, right? There's got to be a way to connect them with somebody in the city that could maybe follow that along and make sure they get those resources and check in with them and kind of follow them down that path. I mean, some nonprofits do it, but it would be great to see somebody in the city. And if there was somebody in the city, would that help you guys in doing your job with that? If there was somebody that could help, has all the resources at their, this is what we have available. These are the beds that are available. Follow along to see if that is followed through. And if it's not, why it's not followed through, that kind of thing. Would that be a helpful thing, or would that just be more work?
Yeah, I mean, these partnerships are always great. And I think it's important to identify, like you had mentioned something that stands out to me about like us doing our job. A lot of the questions are around homelessness.
Yeah,
And that's in and of itself is not a crime.
right.
And so that isn't a law enforcement issue.
Right.
There's no law to enforce there. And so it's a social services
Yeah,
issue. And that's where we, rely heavily on our partners that are either nonprofits or with the county that has social services. If it's something that this committee wants to recommend to the city to stand up some sort of services, then that's an option. I think that there's probably some hesitancy there for several reasons. But again, that the sheriff's office wants to be a good partner with that. So if there's people call the law enforcement, the sheriff's office, police, when they don't know who else to call. And so we'll show up and a lot of times we're just going through the Rolodex of how to help this person best and where to connect them to services in the best way possible. And so any resource, any tool that I can give our deputies, I'm happy to. locally here in town, the person that I would call would be the ant farm initially. I would also connect people with resources through the county that can help with housing. So any additional resources that we can provide and tools we can provide, and we're happy to do so.
Okay,
Awesome.
you have a question?
John?
I'd just like to point out that, those sorts of things sound great, and they really do. But we also need to remind ourselves that we're informed by local towns that have done that, and they've thrown hundreds of millions of dollars into resources, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And it becomes, you read stories of someone that's been arrested that moved here because of the resources and that sort of stuff, versus consequences for behavior that the city or town or what have you put in place for itself. And so while I certainly respect the idea of everyone using the same standard regarding homeless or something like that, what's the point of having a city council or a city committee if we're not, I'm not saying that you're saying that, I'm not saying that at all. It's just, we may have a different idea of what we want that to look like. And what that is, I have no idea. But I'm certainly very, very interested in finding out, because I'm looking at that, whatever it is, 30 miles away or something like that. And it's awful.
It is.
And that's why I joined this committee, was because I was so terrified of having something like that happen, because it's beautiful out here. And, definitely homelessness is not a crime. It's, I think the vast majority of the time it's a mental health issue, or it's a drug issue. And that's awful. But I've seen, down in San Francisco in the 60s and 70s, pick your spot. There's a balance and there's a mix, and what that balance and mix is for a little town like Estacada, I'm certain is going to be different than what a mix looks like for Wilsonville or Gresham or whatever. But I'm very interested in spending as much time as possible to make this the kind of community that it is, and want to keep it that way.
Chief, in my my dealings with the homeless in another state, we were not allowed to take anyone into protective custody unless they were a threat to themselves or others. So it didn't really matter how severe their crisis was at the moment. They had to say some magic words before I could intervene and force them to a facility. Where I'm going with this is kind of for my own clarification, because I'm fairly new here. I'm just wanting to have you explain to me if your laws are the same as what I'm used to, or if they're different. As you know, most homeless people aren't aware that they're as sick as they are, and don't realize that they need the help. And no matter how much you talk to them as a law enforcement officer, a lot of times you cannot get that across to them. And again, if you can't explain to them that they really need some resources, some medication, some treatment, things like that, you're basically going to spend 30 minutes with them and leave, and nothing has been resolved. They're still in the crisis. They're still going to downward spiral until they eventually commit some kind of a criminal matter. Then, you're able to intervene. I get that. Are the laws here for the county and for the city the same, where they have to say they're a threat to themselves or others for you to actually take action at that point? And if so, how many different facilities are available for you to take them, and are they placed on a 72-hour hold? So that's part of the question. Well, actually, that's going to be my only question for right now. So
Sure.
If you can answer that.
Yeah. So I want to make sure that I'm clear here, that we're speaking about mental health issues and people that are in crisis. And there are law enforcement has the ability to take somebody into custody that is gravely disabled, and to the point where they're unable to care for themselves, or they're an immediate danger to themselves or others. And so just like making an arrest, you're taking physical custody of somebody and you have to have probable cause to take custody of someone, take their freedom away,
Right.
essentially to move them from one place to another. That place where they would go in that situation is a hospital. Because it is not a criminal matter, it's a medical
Civil
issue.
Right.
It's like a civil hold. And these are two physician holds. A deputy or law enforcement officer in the state can take someone to a hospital. We would take them to an emergency room. And we have our paperwork that we fill out of why we're bringing them to that hospital. And we would leave them there in the care of a physician at the hospital. The way that works is two doctors usually be in the emergency room, have to evaluate the patient and sign to either hold the patient or release them. But at the point where we take them to the emergency room, that's where law enforcement ends in that
Right.
process.
Right.
And then now it becomes it's part of the medical system, and a lot of the time the people are not held at the hospitals or held for the full 72 hours. I've had a lot of experience, right? All these facts and circumstances are different for every situation, but I've had a lot of times where people are released within, a
Hours.
few hours.
Yep.
And that is the deputies have no
Right.
input on how long
Right.
someone is held.
Right.
And a lot of times that's used for circumstances where we believe somebody may be suicidal, and it's for a safety aspect for that person to keep them safe. But it can be used, like I said, if they're a danger to others as well.
Okay.
We try to make a good determination on, just an example, somebody's running down the street with a knife. If they're threatening people, they could be a candidate of going to jail because they're committing a crime.
Correct.
But if we feel that it's a mental health issue, then maybe jail is not the best place for that. The person
Right.
should be going to a hospital. So we try to weigh those circumstances when making that decision.
Okay. And then I'm sorry, I forgot your name, Carolyn. Follow up on something that she brought up. You were talking about how the ordinances are set up that if a deputy shows up on a homeless situation, they're able to issue the citations. But as you know, most homeless people are not going to have the resources to pay those citations. Now, on the criminal side of it, you don't pay a citation, it goes to a warrant. So is that going to be where your ordinance tickets are going to? So because if it turns into a warrant, that makes it a criminal situation. So like you said, you could just write another ticket, but you could stack 10, 15, 20 tickets on the same person. They're not going to pay the first one. They didn't have it. So they're certainly not going to pay the others. So what's the end result of this? I mean, yeah, you stacked up $5,000 on a person, just throwing a number out, but I'm just saying, when does that turn into this person's not going to pay? So now we got to turn this into a criminal misdemeanor situation where you're able to take somebody to jail and not just be a fine. If they don't pay the fines, what's the repercussions?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I don't think I could answer it fully. Again, law enforcement, right? If you think about it as, and I know you know this, but I'm just going to say that if you think about it, we're a cog in the wheel where we're documenting things that are happening, and then somebody enters into the criminal justice system, and as you're describing, as these things can snowball, that ends up that's determined by the judge, what the judge is going to do with those fines, and what the minimum fine is. Does he dismiss the fines if the person promises not to do something again? There's all these other options that are down the road. Yes, they can. I don't know the answer if unpaid fines for ordinance violations in the city of Escada can result in a warrant. However, I would imagine that they could.
Speaking from the council side of things too, one of the things that came out of Johnson v. Grants Pass was an order from the judge, which has then passed down to the whole Ninth Circuit. We can't create a pathway of a civil violation or a non-criminal violation to a criminal encounter. So you can't say if you get 3 ordinance tickets or violation tickets, then it becomes a criminal. If there's a pathway to lead to that, then it's considered a violation of the Eighth Amendment, is what the judge said. And that's why Grants Pass lost the case, because they had it where if you had 3 violations of the city ordinance, it became a misdemeanor. And so as long as there's not a pathway written where that leads to a criminal piece for camping on the sidewalk or something, then whatever happens on violations and fines is fine after that one. But but after but once it becomes anything else outside of there where we're trying to stack something, it's not gonna currently right now with the Supreme Court decision, it won't be upheld. So unless something gets overturned, that's one of the things that they had problems with and that they struck down. So.
So, I mean, the short answer, I guess, is that there are no repercussions for anyone getting city ordinance tickets if they don't pay them. That's kind of how we're leaving it, correct? Is that correct?
Say that again. I'm sorry. I was distracted.
I said that, so the short answer, I guess, what I'm taking from both of you is that there is really no repercussions for anyone not paying city ordinance citations if they're issued them, right? I mean, that's kind of their fault.
It
right
can't
now.
be written into a way where that the judge can still probably find a way to make it happen. We just can't write an ordinance that goes that way. That's where the line's gonna draw. And that's why it's tricky with this whole thing, is because how do you enforce a no camping ordinance without making it a criminal matter? And that's why we had to take a look at this one. And that's why last night, and that's why I stood against the ordinance last night, because I didn't meet what we needed. And so that's why that's one thing, some of the things that we can do between our different committees and the council is to come up with ways that we can build out this ordinance that meets our needs for safety in the city here, and still meets in line with what all the Supreme Court decisions from Martin v. Boise, Johnson v. Grants Pass. There's a couple other ones that have come out that have been struck down and also upheld as well. And there's other things that we'll probably bring up over the next couple of months that'll probably help build that out, with stuff like Spokane Valley has a great type of ordinance in there. But to go back to what your question is, no, we can't really write something that goes there, but if the judge finds a way to make the connection without violating that Supreme Court decision, then it's possible, I guess. But I'm also not a lawyer either, so.
So,
Thank you.
so with most tickets, we have a couple of options. One is you could send it to collections. So we could send it to collections, and then another potentially, which happens with a lot of ordinance violations, is we could put a lien on if they owned property. Now, if they're homeless, it's not outside the realm of possibility that they might own some property, but you send them to collections.
Yeah. All right,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Carrie, did you have some?
Yeah, this been on the streets working with people through ministries over the last 25 years. Downtown Portland. People make up their mind what they want to do. They play the system. I know Chief knows that, we know that. And, the idea that the tipping point is us helping them is a great idea. It's really good. Offering someone help is really A+. Let's help this person. But their free will to live that way is their choice. And when we enter into this realm where we're trying to get more vested into somebody than they are in themselves, we enable them. And these programs of people, they play the system. It's known from Seattle to Montana, all the way up out of New Mexico, that Portland is the place to come.
Mhm.
That's the place. It's the hot spot. So we flood Portland, the city of roses is now the city of thorns. We understand the problem, and now we're dispersing the problem to the rural communities. And so offering people health is really good, and most of it is, people live the lifestyle they live by choice. And the thing that tips the apple cart over is enabling. We're going to help you live the way you want to live, which is violating the law and living where you want and imposing upon the community. And that's the problem. And I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but people that are offering these things, if you offer them drugs, if you offer them a substance type of drug to keep them jacked up in their system, that's not a good thing. If they don't want to go and get help, then they can resist an officer and say, I'm not leaving. And because it's not a crime, we're getting flooded. We're getting flooded with people. That's what the press is. So it's the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. If you build a facility for them, they will come because they play the system. And so the issue really is, I think it's beyond mental health, because most of the people, you've got pregnant women out there that need help. There's facilities for them to go get help, and they will take that help. And my wife and I contributed to Bethany House, started it. She was a delivery coach. The whole thing is to help people that want help. But when people don't want help, they run their own course. And that's really the issue I think we're dealing with, is the people that don't want help.
Mhm.
And I mean, maybe I'm stating the obvious, but to pretend that everybody wants help is you're fooling yourself. And just making these statements is so what do you do when people don't want help? And they want to play the system and they want to play you.
Right.
That's the core of what's going on.
So one thing that from a council side, I can kind of point you guys towards is trying to figure out the tools to meet that particular situation. And that is, what kind of recommendations can you guys come up with to give to the council, maybe an ordinances or changes to ordinance that we can put in place that would give them the tools that when they don't meet, the fact that they actually need the help, and where they're simply there because they want to, or, maybe it's a drug issue that they're just choosing to continue, or they have other more nefarious purposes for why they're wanting to do it. And they're not actually seeking or wanting the help, and they just want to live outside of that, the society, basically. Coming up with those type of ordinances and tools that would be legally defendable is what we need to put in place. And so that when the officers run into these situations, they can actually use those to enforce the law. For example, currently right now, drugs are basically rampant in the state because the laws have just been, well, I'm not going to use the right words I want to use there, but the laws are just crap. I'll use the words crap. So there's ways that have been talked about of trying to do that until measured what's that measure again?
114.
110, thank you.
Oh,
110 can be overturned. And so things that can be looked at as something like an uncategorized misdemeanor to specifics of, maybe marijuana or something like that. And that's where you started getting into, you need, a lawyer to figure that piece out, but that's something you guys can look at. What is it that they're going to run into in our city that we should be looking at an ordinance, work with our city lawyer, and to figure out what that would actually look like in an ordinance that can be enforced, get it to the city council. We can look at trying to pass that. And then now they have something that when they run into somebody who's, doing specific drug that might fall into, they say, oh, well, we have something here it's a misdemeanor crime that we can now enforce on there. Even if that's misdemeanor crime is a simple one, they have the option, if they need to, they can take them to jail. Or if anything, I think it results in the ticket sometimes. So this depends on it becomes officer discretion at that point. But a misdemeanor is something that they can take them to jail for. And I'm hoping that if I'm wrong on anything, you jump in here, but but that's one tool that we can look at trying to put those in place. And that's something when they come up on here, they can do that. For example, it's a misdemeanor in the city of Estacada if someone is showing their private parts. Nudity is illegal in the city of Estacada. If an officer happens to walk up on a homeless person who's, exposing himself or herself, then they could choose to detain them and take them to jail. They may get out the next day or a few hours later, but it's an option that they have, and that's at their discretion. So that's an example of one we have on the books now. So that'd be my recommendation. That's something you guys could focus on to try to at least, move in the right direction of what we're looking for.
Excellent. Thank you, Counselor. Mitch.
Just a quick
Oh,
question.
Mitch, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Mitch had
Yeah,
something.
I was wanting to touch base back on the mental health stuff. Chief Mendoza answered most of the questions too, but if you have more questions about how the backside of it works beyond law enforcement, I worked in that field for several years, and I mean, we could have that conversation now. If you have any questions about it, though, I'm happy to answer them for you.
Right, John.
Just a quick question about, can you write an ordinance that has an immediate consequence, or does it have to be a crime? And by immediate consequence, I mean potentially taking someone into custody or making something behavior change at that time with an ordinance, or does it have to be like a misdemeanor or something like that?
Well, the city can't actually put felonies. We can only have ordinance that goes to misdemeanors. So a misdemeanor is a crime. And that's usually it's either that or it's a violation, which is a monetary piece. I mean, if you criminally trespass somebody from a location, that's technically on the criminal side. So you either got criminal or you got the civil side. That's basically the two sides of the justice system. So it's got to fall in one of those two categories. There's really no other way to enforce somebody to do something without one of those two pieces, either monetarily or criminally. So.
All right.
Like you
Is
wanted to say
everybody good on asking the chief questions?
Oh, wait.
Okay.
All right. All right, moving on then, or do you have
Yeah,
something?
let me think
Go ahead.
how I want to say this. If I think that I understand where the majority of people are coming from, and you don't want to see a deterioration of the city, right? And having homeless camps like we see in other cities. Thankfully, we don't have that problem right now. I think though, if you're going to try to come up with a recommendation to the city council, keep in mind that the restrictions that are set in place already are because some cities had tried to be overly restrictive, and then lawsuits came about. So I think that's just something that I would caution you against. Like I understand where you're coming from and what the thought is, and you're trying to navigate this as best you can, but just keep that in mind. If you're overly restrictive, that can cause problems as well.
Question, Chief, would that be legal backfire type stuff? Is that what you're saying, or?
Yeah, I think, Councilman, you're probably a lot more familiar with this than I am, but
He's referring to, for example, in Johnson's v. Grants Pass, some of the issues that they had was they had restrictions as far down as you couldn't have certain particular like sleeping bags and things, and they considered it paraphernalia. And they got so deep and restrictive in that the judge basically ruled in favor of the plaintiff with prejudice, throwing out all the ordinances, making them have to try to figure out what to do at this point. So when you're trying to be restrictive, like I said, the key things that came out of there, you can't criminalize being homeless. You can't have something that leads to a criminalization of being homeless. Now, if if, for example, let's just say Lieutenant Mendoza was to approach somebody sleeping on the sidewalk, blocking the sidewalk, and he says, hey, you're blocking the sidewalk, you know, it's a safety issue, what can we do to help you? And he moves along with that. And then that guy decides to take a swing at Chief Mendoza here. Well, now he's committed an actual crime separate from being the homeless part of it. That is enforceable without leading to the criminal act. And he could potentially take him in for attempted assault on an officer. Whereas if it's you know, he couldn't just arrest him for blocking the sidewalk, you know, or sleeping there, because that would be violation of his Eighth Amendment rights. And basically, we can't make rules to that point. So if we get so restrictive where that violates it, we're gonna lose according to the current decision from the Ninth Circuit. Okay, till that's overruled. So what we can do, like I said, is if you can find ways to provide options for them to enforce what doesn't criminalize and over restrict, then those are enforceable. But when you get too deep into it, like I said, you can't have a sleeping bag, it's paraphernalia. You can't have a tent, it's paraphernalia. That gets too deep. So I really recommend you guys do read the briefs on Johnson v. Grants Pass and Boise v. Martin. Those will really show you kind of what we're up against there. And then look at what some of the cities and communities have done that are navigating that one. And the best one that was recommended that I found was Spokane Valley. They found a way to navigate it, and it's been working for them for 2 years now. Basically it's a hybrid approach where they say as long as there's locations for them to go and they can be attached to that, then they have a no camping ordinance in their city. But if when there's no locations for them to go, then the camping ordinance is suspended for the night. And then they designate a spot for them to go at that point. They've never had to suspend it at this point up in the location, but it's because they work with the counties in the area to use their resources. So like I said, I really recommend the reads, understand what's there. I mean, granted, none of us are lawyers, but it does help to understand what we're trying to navigate there. Because the big thing is we can make all sorts of laws, but then if they're challenged, they can be thrown out and they can be overruled by the state Supreme Court or the federal Supreme Court. And then like with Grants Pass, all of them can be considered unconstitutional and have to be rewritten anyways. So that's why we're trying to navigate this right. The one from last night was too broad and it was not meeting what we were looking for, and there's better ways to do it. And that's what we're trying to figure out and navigate to meet the desires of the people of Estacada, which is to stop it to the best possible from basically not designating a location. They don't want it. And so it's our job as a council and as appointed representatives to find a way to meet the desire of the people, but do as best we can to try to meet the laws that are out there so that we can it's a very narrow road we got to navigate, because that is where the state and where the justice system has put us. So, but it's our job to try to find that narrow road, but it is out there because people are finding it. So.
Oh, yeah, and one more thing, I just kind of build on something I said earlier that my recommendation is not that we bring services to Estacada to try to help everybody that's here. What I was saying is that what I know from being in law enforcement for more than 2 decades, right, is that having as a deputy on the street, having options is the best thing possible. Because not every tool is going to be used for every situation. And so having various options is always best. And you can, some things are cut and dry. You see somebody commit a crime, you arrest them and you take them to jail, and it's just cut and dry, but not everything is that way. And not everybody is in the same situation. And so just having options is the best way to move forward in my opinion. And thinking about our deputies out on the road and trying to make the best decision they can in the moment. I'd rather give them options than take options away, if that makes sense. And that's why I was talking earlier about how we would work with our partners. I mean, you might come across a situation where issuing a citation is the way to go. Taking somebody to jail might be the way to go. Connecting somebody with services may be the way to go. Trying to connect them with services 15 times might be the way to go. It just depends, and trying to, you may need to try to build a relationship with somebody before they'll accept help. And I do agree. There was a comment earlier, there are, drug addiction is a serious thing. And is a powerful thing, and trying to move somebody away from that. It takes more than just contact with law enforcement to do that. I mean, that's, I wish I had a nickel for everyone that was in the backseat of my patrol car that said, that they wanted help, because generally that's when they want the help, is when they're going to jail. Some of them, sought the help. We offer the help, but it's sometimes it just takes time. I'll use this as an example with this. The woman who I was talking to earlier, just before we started, that came in, it's about building relationships. I've known and dealt with her for quite a few years, and I'm trying to connect her with somebody that has a trailer for her, and it's actually her trailer, and he wants to get it back to her. So it's just making that connection, but breaking through the that there's mental health issues there, and breaking through that trust, or gaining that trust, and making progress that's sometimes difficult and takes time.
Well, I definitely appreciate you doing that, Chief. That's awesome.
Yep.
I noticed she was coming down Fourth on the way into the meeting, so I hadn't seen her before, but that's good. You're trying to get that relationship with the trailer. Definitely got an end game for her there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's good. I just have a recommendation that I can send Elena information on all three of these cases that Council Licky mentioned. I can also get some of the ordinances on health and safety. And you guys want to do some research in the next 30 days or whatever, if that's okay. So we can look forward to giving the city council hopefully some type of guidance, or we can come up with some type of solutions. In July, we can give them a recommendation. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Would
All right.
you like this information sent out prior to the meeting or with your next packet?
Prior.
Okay,
I'll try to send the topics and, the links on the website and some of the things that Councilor Licky and Chief mentioned.
okay.
And we'll try to, and then you can send it out to the rest of the.
Yep.
Because I want to make sure we follow that
Yes.
public
Yeah,
records.
public records, public meeting laws.
Yep, all right. So, okay. Oh. Go ahead, Joel, I'm sorry.
Something that I can also try to direct you guys in that'll be helpful is I think the key thing that people that I kind of gathered from last night's meeting was there's very particular set of things that they were concerned about by having homeless out here. I don't think it was necessarily that they were going to be here. It was crime, dirtiness, basically a visual issue, bothering people. Those type of things are the ones that they're concerned with, things that you see in Portland. So maybe we can find a way to kind of break those down to what those are and kind of put some actually the description to each one of those. That might help us then figure out when it comes to those particular things. For example, like the filthiness and the dirtiness, we can review our littering laws and things and how that might apply, and give law enforcement something to enforce in that area, or the city code enforcement something to enforce. We can break down those particular things. So when we do have the homeless here, if we have rules around that, it might give them something to make sure that they're at least not going to be a public nuisance in the process. And then that allows them, if they're here, they're less of if they're not a nuisance, it gives law enforcement more time to work with them to get them connected with services too. Versus if they're here, they're throwing dirt everywhere, they're screaming down the street and all these other issues that are causing the problems. that's, we don't want. We want to do from the humanitarian side, we want to make sure we're connecting people to resources. That's what I get what Clackamas County Sheriff's talking about and trying to do that piece of it. Whereas at the same time, we want to make sure people are safe. They can still enjoy their safe city, their right to peace, I think is what I'm looking for. And cleanliness in the city. And so, because you think about it, if they had homeless out there, but they all kept clean, they didn't steal, they weren't doing the drugs and everything else, it probably wouldn't be as big of an issue for people there because they wouldn't be bothered to be like another neighbor. Granted, if they weren't on their property and things, but it's all those issues that caused the problems in the first place. They're on their properties, they're stealing things. These are the issues that people are always talking about. So if we can address those, it allows them to do their job to, when those issues come up, to address those, and then they can work to get them connected with resources. I think that's gonna make less of an impact. So that's my recommendation and how we can start stepping forward into what ordinances and how we can improve those, which will eventually lead into our camping ordinance.
Excellent. Thank you. Counselor, appreciate it. Okay. All right, moving on to committee business. First thing we have on the agenda is National Night Out discussion. All right. I do have something that I'll try to send, that I will send to Elena and Melanie. It's something we can put online. This is something that was done by Hillsborough Police Department, saying NNO brings together neighbors and public safety personnel to build and enhance a sense of community and
Great.
trust and raise awareness. And it says space is limited, so register early. So it has something
Okay,
on there. If I can send that to you.
yeah, I can
And
create an
it's
event on the
Tuesday,
website.
August 1st. Plan your party and invite Hillsborough Police. We'll bring motorcycles, canines, prize and goodie bags for the kids. So something like that.
Yeah.
All right,
No problem.
excellent. All right, so this is the first time I've ever had to do anything like this. Does anyone have any experience in doing a national night out?
I
Chief?
actually do, because I'm a
You do?
neighborhood
Okay.
watch leader.
Nice.
Okay, I reached out to a couple of the companies in town and the community center, and they said they're willing to have a booth and talk about the services they have in town for seniors, and
Mhm.
so,
I mean, everybody does it differently.
Right.
When I've done it a few times, one is you have your neighborhood watch leaders that have their own neighborhood that they're in charge of.
Right.
And they hold just like a picnic, like a potluck in their own neighborhoods. It's a great way just to get to know your neighbors,
okay,
who's living on your street. And the other option is more like the citywide that you're looking to do.
right. Well, I mean, we've already applied for the
Reserve the-
permit.
yeah.
Right, so I just want to make sure that we're still doing it over there and.
One of the big places to look at is called Happy Valley. Now they do a grandiose over there, but
Mhm.
they
Right.
they didn't start grandiose, so they give you a good idea. And I was asked Chief here, he said Sarah McClurg at the Clackamas County
Okay.
Sheriff's Office is also who
Okay,
coordinates their national night out with them. So reach out to her as well.
definitely will do that.
And I think it's I can't think of the fire department's PIO.
Sarah, poet, their
It's-
fire marshal.
Yeah, I think she's also the PIO.
She
So
wears a
yes,
lot of hats.
yeah, she's the one you want to reach out to them
Okay.
as well. So
I don't have a list of all the places in town, does the chamber have something for us that we can send something out? Similar to this online, and if people are interested, or the
So
newspaper,
you want to send it out to the chamber to ask businesses to participate or nonprofits to participate?
yes,
So
is
that,
that generally how it's done, or?
generally, when the city has done it, like when we do the WhatsApp, we have an email list and we send it out to our partner agencies and invite them to attend.
Okay,
And then accept RSVPs. So we do have a list. It's not complete, but it's a pretty good list. We usually get about a dozen partner agencies who come to the WhatsApp events.
okay, and what have you had luck on with food? Are we having people for the city cook? Are we having vendors show up? I don't know how extensive this is. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, did you budget funds for this?
Mhm.
Okay, so if you budgeted funds, you can either, you can do it yourself and you could cook it yourself. You'd have to make sure that you guys had the food permit and then we could apply for a permit through the city with the county for the health permit. Or you could contact like one of the food carts and see if they'd be willing to come down there and do it.
What does everybody think? Any ideas?
I think it'd be easier to get a food cart to help
Yes.
because then we don't have to worry about all the rest of it. Plus, I mean, we've been talking about this a lot, right? We've asked these questions before. We haven't gotten a lot of resources.
Right.
It feels like it's been kind of put on the back burner and I hate to say it that way, but I mean, if we have a list, I mean, that would would you be sending out that invite for us to that list?
Yeah, I would send out the invite to the list and then whoever is on your committee that's going to take the RSVPs, I'd have them RSVP to that person.
Okay, so we need to decide who gets the RSVPs today, because I mean, it's coming up.
Yeah.
And then one or two of us needs to take the lead to go talk to food vendors and do that because it feels like it has been hard to get answers to these questions and get moving. We do have a place.
Right.
We have an email that's gonna get sent out. So maybe we need to decide, who's gonna take the RSVPs and who's gonna go and find out what food vendors will help and go from there. We did budget something, so we also probably need to get like little goodies for the kids or something. I don't know. I guess the police provide that too, but yeah. Joel has a question.
Go ahead, Joe.
Just a recommendation, having something sent out in the water bill as well and posted on the
I think
city
we-
website to let people know about it.
That's
Is one
been
big thing,
mentioned too.
inviting them in, letting them know who's coming in.
Okay.
But I really, really do recommend calling Happy Valley tomorrow and
Okay.
asking them, hey, what steps do you take to get this? Who do you invite? What do you kind of things first, and then they'll tell you, they have a big one. They have literally 50,000 people go there, 100,000 people.
Yeah, I think last year, I think there was a band and a laser light show and.
Oh,
Yeah, so
geez.
they go pretty
over the
big,
top.
but they can tell, they didn't start there. And
Right.
so they can give you some of the steps that they took to get it going
Okay.
and get people there and they bring food vendors in.
Okay.
And then they have other, like they invite food vendors in to do all the food. They also have, I think, don't they have like non-food vendors to come in and do stuff too that's related, or is it just organizations?
I'm proud to say I was at Estacadas National Night Out last year, so I didn't see what Happy Valley was doing, but I'll be here again.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay,
Timing wise, you have missed the deadline for the July billing for the water bill.
Well, and we mentioned it at our last meeting, didn't
We
we?
did, yeah,
It was
that's fine.
mentioned that it would get put in the water bill. So I don't know. That's what I mean. Everything's
Okay.
kind of been put
Yeah.
off.
and
Yeah.
I'm still having issues with my email for the city, so
Yeah.
I'm still working on that. And I am gonna need some help because I have a family emergency and I have to leave for Florida tomorrow.
Okay.
So I definitely need some help planning this. I just went through planning the cruise in for the American Legion. That's coming to fruition. And I'm just having a hard time right now and I just need you guys' help.
Yeah.
That's all. So
I will, when you get back, let me know and. we
it'll be
can sit-
July 3rd. I'll be back.
Okay,
So it'll
then
be a
I,
while.
yeah, I won't be here July
Okay.
3rd, so I'll be back July 5th. And we can sit down with IT and
Okay.
figure out your email issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we could just do something in regards to, I think volunteers, I think that was in the guide also. If we
Mhm.
could just have volunteers, try to something like Connie does for the downtown Estacada Commission. She's making sure she has volunteers for the 4th of July parade.
Yeah, we have a general form that we can duplicate and put
Okay.
on the website and put in Facebook for your event.
Okay.
That would be good.
When's National Night Out
August
again?
1st.
Tuesday, August 1st.
Okay, there's not enough time to get another water bill out.
No, I
Okay.
would say it'd be really, really hard to get it in the water. I mean, the water bill goes out at the end of July, so
Okay.
yeah,
Do we have it on the reader board?
I don't handle the reader board. So if it's not on the reader board, feel free to send it to Sadie or
Oh.
Karen and they will put
Okay.
it on the reader board.
Okay. That sounds good.
So we need to figure out who wants to help find food vendors and who wants to take the RSVPs and go from there. Any takers?
I have some contacts for the food vendors that we're gonna have it. So
Cool.
I can ask them.
And you're sending out to.
That's gonna
And
be
you need help.
actually
Figaro's
figure out
Pizza,
Other
uh,
people need to work. too.
GDC Frozen Treats and
Mhm.
so
I just need the
Christie's.
person for-
Well, and I have, I can take on other food carts because I have a personal relationship with quite a few of them, so I can talk to the food carts. Yeah, Kellen's, Timbertown Grub. But we need like, does anybody else here want to take on anybody or talk to anybody?
I'd like most of the city council there if possible.
Yeah,
That would be
I'll
fantastic.
Be sure as a liaison to relay that to the city council. Maybe, will the sheriff's office be in attendance heavily?
he just said that. He
I know.
will.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I'll be there and I will see, usually for these types of things, we'll as was explained, that the gamut is, it could be a very small, like community or just
Right.
a few homes, really, a neighborhood, right? And up to the city size. So I'll put the request in to try to get one of our canines out there or a couple of our
Thank you,
canines.
Chief.
A few deputies if we can muster that. We're also, right, this is not, some people will come in and do this just because they want to. We'll get the deputies that are working in this area to stop by and so we'll get some representation from the sheriff's office there
Okay.
for sure.
Excellent,
Mhm.
excellent.
Cool.
We know if fire department will be there also, like looking at Happy Valleys right now. And it's put on by their Parks and Rec, but they laser light shows and yeah, they got all
Yeah,
kinds
it's
of craziness, but. Specifically calls out fire department and sheriff's office being there.
Okay, well, they're right
Yeah.
across the street. I'm sure
Yeah.
we can get them looped into that. Anyone else have anything in regards to National Night Out? Good.
If you give me a person and your email, and I can send out the invites before I go on vacation, because I'm gonna be gone Friday through
Okay,
Tuesday.
okay.
Does anyone want to take on that RSVP thing? If not, I'll do it. You want to do it?
Sure.
He'll take RSVPs.
Okay, so
Okay.
Heath will take it on?
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you, Keith. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Mitch.
All right.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we need to talk about? Chief says he'll be there, so I'm going with that. That it's gonna be a success.
Yeah.
You guys gonna be there? All right. Appreciate that. I don't think anything else. Food wise, some nonprofits, some people in town.
Yeah, I think on their list, there's those people, so we should be good there.
Okay. All right. All right, let's get everyone through the rest of the committee business then. We'll call it a night. Elena was able to help me with the next topic here on the street signs and topic number 3, conditions of city streets. We got something back from Dawn in regards to the street signs. And I was just specifically talking about just driving up down Main and Broadway on the mill side would have all the signs. It would be first and Broadway, second and Broadway. And then the Main Street sign wouldn't have any. So, I mean, we have a lot of new people coming into town. We have a lot of people that are gonna be taking kids to school and things like that. And even I think first at the top of the hill on either side of Main or Broadway and Main didn't have anything. So there's no Main, there was no First, there was nothing. So, but it looks like you see in here, Don's ordering the signs. Today, that was on June 20th. And as for the potholes, I mentioned to him out in front of, just the, like kind of like Long Canyon in front of Estacada Eye Care. Up by the food cart by the junior high, and then someone was also asking about Clackamas River Elementary. You know, where the cones are always out right there. There's like I don't want to say chasm, but I mean, we all know to move over, but you know, so he's gonna put down that.
If we don't get it filled soon, we'll lose the kid in that canyon.
Yeah.
Call search and rescue for him.
But he addressed it, it'd be fixed next budget year, which is July 1st or after.
yeah, it'll be after July 1st, so after July 1st, we can put it out to bid, which
Okay.
probably means it won't be done until next year,
Okay,
like the next in 2024.
Right.
Jeez.
We have budgeted into the budget for a complete repaving from Southeast Third all the way to Northeast Sixth. So, okay.
Can that be temporarily filled with something in the meantime before someone loses a wheel in there or something?
I
Or-
think Dawn goes out fairly regularly. The public works go out and do some patching and
Patching, okay.
fills.
They've
Yeah.
patched up by Estacada Eye Care and I've
Yeah.
seen that. So,
They do patch them
Okay.
pretty regularly.
Might need to patch that again. That was pretty big today.
Okay.
So,
We'll pass that on to Dawn.
yeah, something else, by the way, since we're talking about streets and things, I've heard of quite a few requests recently about the stop signs over there on
Shafford?
no,
4th of May.
no, good golly, so, thank you.
Cemetery. Yeah. That's right.
Cemetery, and, oh my goodness, where that three-way stop
Right at
is.
the intersection of the Lynn and.
Yeah,
Odd
yeah, I
Fellow
think
Cemetery.
maybe we could do a study to see if we can possibly get those removed. I've heard several requests and so recently too about it,
Okay,
some very recently,
One of our council members mentioned it too.
right.
so, yep. So at least just assuming we can, something to put on your guys' thoughts there is about doing a study or something to see if that's worth removing and what you think.
That sounds good. And I don't know, Elena, if anything's been sent to Don in regards to a safety issue that we've set up for citizens to fill out a sheet or a traffic study to be sent to him. I know we're like third or fourth in that process. I believe it goes to Don and then Melanie and then eventually to us, or So, I didn't
haven't-
know if he's gotten any of those. I need to,
Yeah, I
check on
don't
that.
know. You're gonna have to check with Dawn.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. Does anyone else have anything on the signs or
Uh,
conditions
yeah,
of streets?
I have a question,
Mhm.
just in procedure. If people in a neighborhood have a desire to have something done, like a stop sign or a caution sign or a flashing light,
Mhm.
and someone is it required to have a petition? Yes, we get 45 people to sign a thing that says, hey, we need a stop sign here, or we need a regulation on a speed sign.
I think that's what the form that Jim was talking about, right?
Okay.
Is that form, people fill that out and then it goes to Dawn, and
Public
Dawn does
Works.
the Public Works, does the traffic study, does the research on it, and
So Dawn has to do the study, not that the people's voice don't really matter in the study?
we have code related to implementing traffic signs. And there are,
Yeah, one of the reasons why the study is just from a representative side is, let's just say we want to put a stop sign, I don't know, let's say out here, right? And then someone comes along and someone stops and the person behind them rear ends them. And if when they go to court, they can pull up and see if there's a traffic study done on that. If there's not a traffic study done on to say, yes, that needs to be done there. Or the traffic study is done on there and finds out you didn't need to have it there, then it can fall back on the city actually for improperly managing the roads and stuff. And it gets down to kind of the traffic study showing that it needs to happen. Or that there's a possibility or won't negatively affect the situation or make it more dangerous. Shows it, one, it gives you guys more data to go on, but it also avoids the potential for having later consequences to that. The people's voice is the most important thing. That's what gets us looking in there and trying to see what we can do to make it happen. And we do everything we can to make something like that happen. A good example was the Shafford ones. We had this traffic study showed that they could go there, but they didn't have to. And so we chose to go ahead and go there, put them in there because they could go there. So that's because the people requested one there. That's what it is, but there's still, the people's voice is definitely critical. We just need to make sure that we follow the process so that later it can't come back and fall back on the people uselessly. There's a process we can go through, but it's definitely the people's voice is top notch. Because if they didn't request one, there's something that changed to happen somewhere, we probably wouldn't even look at it.
So
So-
Joel, Commissioner, would that apply to a flashing yellow light where someone pushes a button and says, hey, I'd like to cross the street?
Any request that's made by the citizens, we should at least take a consideration to look at it and see what's happening there. So especially if it's something that's coming more and more from people, then yeah, I mean, it could come down where as a traffic study says, by putting X traffic change in there, could potentially endanger people's lives by whatever they come out of there, could cause potential issues because of whatever that might be. I mean, I'm not a traffic expert, but I've seen some things come out where it says where it's not recommended because of X. And then we could put it in there anyways, because people wanted it, and then there's a problem, it causes an issue at that point, but it gives us the data. We could still make the decision to put something in despite what a traffic study says. But then we still have to have that data available to us, and then we decide if we want to go against that or not. So it's kind of like the information what our lawyer was giving us. They gave us all the information, put together a ordinance, and as a council decided it was better to not go with that recommendation in the ordinance and you know, go along with what the people wanted on that one. And we said, yeah, we can take that risk, and we went with it. It's the same idea. We need the information in front of us, and there's a process to go through for it. But because there might people may want something, they may come back up, and there may be something in that study that they didn't realize or maybe an issue is presented in the council meeting, a public hearing. And then they're like, oh, well, makes sense why we shouldn't have that there. We understand why there's not one there, or they may still want it. And that comes on the council to decide what to do at that point. So it's just more information along the way in the process. That's what it is. So.
So, are all traffic studies done by Dawn?
No, they're usually done by an engineer.
Yeah.
We hire an engineering firm to do
So
traffic
to
studies.
do something that costs money.
Generally, yes. So depending on what you want to do. So some things might not cost money from us. Like if you're wanting to say, change the speed of a county road, then that would be not necessarily money on us. It might be money on the county, because we would refer it to the county. The county would be the one to do the traffic study. You know, it might be 25th down their list of potential items and could take a year, 2 years or whatever, but that wouldn't necessarily cost us money. But yeah.
Got it. So if it's a city road, not a county road, then it would have to, a traffic design study, feasibility study would then be initiated, and that would cost money.
Yes.
So, and that would come out of what committee for money?
It doesn't come out of committee budgets. That is a public works budget item.
And if a couple of ordinances or changes happen, then that means they have to look at the budget to see if they can do that, right?
It depends. Yeah, we have budgeted a certain amount for streets.
So,
And,
okay,
and yeah,
so the budget could be a tipping point of doing anything, right?
Yes.
it could delay or change the timeline, but I don't know that it would be the tipping point for doing it, period.
And depending on the priorities of the council can direct the city staff, hey, this is your highest priority to do this in this area. And then they could reallocate funds accordingly from that particular bucket, right?
Yeah.
So that street fund or something to do. So the city council has the ability to direct staff in certain areas, depending on the priority, what's there and how it falls into, what's needs. For example, for like, if we had 3 people die because of a speed on a road somewhere and it determined because of the speed of that road, that's probably going to pop a lot higher on the counties, on the county, I mean, the cities council's priority list to say, we need to figure out what's going on there. Should we lower their change it? What kind of safety stuff should we do? Versus, potholes or something like that, we don't need to do those because we need to save lives. That might be something, that's an example that might raise up on the council's priority list. And it just really depends. Every situation is going to change that, but that's it. It really does. Right now, we have a set plan that we go through in the beginning of every year and say, this is our priorities. These are the roads we want to work on. These are our projects. These are how we should allocate the money. We've approved the budget. We have the budget committee. All that's there to help us guide us through the year, but things can change if need
And
be.
I would recommend, if you have people who are concerned about any traffic incidents, to put it in the TSP, because we use that TSP to develop our capital improvement plan, our project plan every year. That's what these kind of system plans are for, is so that we can use that to allocate the funds and figure out where to spend the funds. So if you know people that have issues and they haven't contributed it to that, that is the place to do it right now.
Just to give you guys an idea, we had $200 million in projects on the we had $200 million in projects on the project list. And I want to say we had what, 9 million or 9 million or something like that to do it, 9 million to do those projects. And so you can see there's a lot of projects to do. We got to prioritize them and as well. So it's and that's, you know, I think that's over the next year or two for the 9 million. How long- What was that time period on them?
I'm not sure about the time frame, but
Yeah.
if it's included in the TSP, if it's included in that plan, that also enables us to write grants for these projects. Because now we've shown that we have community input, it's been prioritized, our engineers have looked at it, all the little boxes we have to check if we're applying for an ODOT or a federal transportation grant. So it's really, really important that if you have those kind of issues, that they get into the TSP.
Thank you.
Keep in mind too, the roads in Estacada and stuff, while we have a lot of control on what happens on them, there's still county and state regulations and controls that we have to go through and adhere to as well. So we can't, you know, say that we want the road to be 10 feet wide. There's minimum requirements as there as well that we're forced into boxes on in some of those cases. And that's, you know, we have to jump through those hoops as well. So.
Good, John.
Just regarding the TSP, I think that's an outstanding way to go. My experience when they had that community outreach was 2 people showed up and I was one.
Mhm.
So if you've got a neighborhood that's interested in something like that, and then you get that neighborhood to go ahead and do the little surveys or whatever, that's driving the business, because all of a sudden they've got, you know, 2 people looking at this and you've got 45 looking at this. It makes it easy to prioritize things. And it's a vehicle that exists. So if you've got an existing vehicle you can use, makes sense. My understanding is this traffic study stuff, sometimes they're compelled just by traffic flows. I don't know that you have to do it every single time, but if there's a certain amount of traffic, I was reading about that commercial subdivision that's going in, and the amount of studies they had to do
Yep.
was crazy. And I think that,
Do you mean the industrial park up here?
yeah, there was so much data.
Because they had the road coming out
Yep,
to the 224 and then they had Rivermill
yeah.
intersection also connected with that.
So I suspect that, you know, the city is compelled to do these studies based on traffic flow, but there may be some instances where, you know, traffic is so small, they don't. But from a CYA perspective, if it's feasible, I mean, I suspect there's probably a wide range in cost also for those sorts of things. But the TSP would be the way to go to start, in my humble opinion.
Keep in mind too, that sometimes one project, if the traffic study's done on a certain intersection, that traffic study can be used by multiple projects. So if it's current, I think we've seen that on a couple subdivisions and things.
Yeah,
So,
and when these developers are doing the traffic studies for their approval through the planning commission, we aren't paying for that. They're paying for those. So that we can use that data and we didn't have to pay for it.
So anyone else on roads or?
I have a question.
Go ahead,
And
Brittany.
I've been trying to find a place to put this, but I'm just gonna ask it here. It's kind of a little off topic, but nothing we're talking about tonight really touches it. I've had a lot of complaints from businesses coming to me and individual people that have their homes coming to me about code enforcement. And my question is, from what I understand, from what I've noticed in the process or what we've been told, is if there's a complaint, then they investigate or they go and they find out what that complaint's about. What is the recourse for if somebody is being complained about as an attack? And what I mean by that is when you find out that, say, a business is in competition with somebody. This is a hypothetical, but this
Yeah.
is kind of where it's kind of similar to this. And their competition is continuously complaining about them to code enforcement, to where now code enforcement is out there every week,
Mhm.
bugging them about this, or this needs to be moved 1 inch. I mean, it's to the point of harassment.
I mean-
And that's happening in neighborhoods as well. We have a neighbor that has they actually had a court case against their neighbor because they were harassing them to that point. And this neighbor is allowed to contact code enforcement over and over again and send them to their neighbor across. At what point do you say, okay, this is inappropriate, we need to find a new way?
If there's nothing actionable, code enforcement won't contact the property owner. Generally, the first step is they'll just drive by, they'll walk in. So if somebody's complaining about their neighbor's weeds and they go there and they're like, their weeds are fine, they don't do anything with it. There's nothing actionable about that complaint. I don't know that there's anything in our code regarding retaliatory kind of things. So I know I've seen it happen too, where neighbors will start going back and forth. They'll go, it's a waste of our time, it's a waste
Yeah.
of their time. But if there's nothing actionable about it, then code enforcement doesn't do anything.
That might be something for us to look at if just like you wouldn't abuse calling the police. It's kind of not to exactly that level, but we can maybe look at something where if it's found to be a consistent false reports or something, that there can be some sort of maybe.
Yeah, put a penalty or a fine in there. You
Yeah.
guys can certainly suggest that too.
Yeah, I think
council
that's an idea
to
because
address.
also like you find when this happens, if the normal thing to do is to wait until they're contacted or complained to do anything, then you're also opening the door for very unfair enforcement. Because you've got somebody here who nobody ever complains about, they get away with doing all these things that are against code enforcement. And you got somebody here who's being complained about and they're being told that they're getting in trouble because their sign is 1 inch too far forward. It feels like I'm just, that's an
Yeah,
example.
I was
That's
gonna
not-
say, I doubt that Amy
yeah.
would,
Yeah,
write
that's-
someone a ticket for their sign being 1 inch.
That's just a hypothetical. I'm just saying.
So our code enforcement officer does drive around town too. And if there are egregious errors, if there are things that she sees and she's like, oh my God, those blackberries are 6 feet tall. Even if nobody complained about it, she will cite them.
Yeah, I get that. I just think that I've witnessed it myself. If you're not complaining and she's not seeing an egregious thing, but it is a small thing, there is an uneven enforcement. There is. And I mean, she's one person. So
She's one person part-time.
there's gotta be something, maybe we can recommend in the future, something to kind of help that, because I'm getting a lot of people are talking to me a lot about it. For some reason, I'm the person they're talking to. I don't know why. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy.
Mhm.
All right, let's see, number 4 on committee business. Construction or beginning of Main Street project. Do we know
Yeah.
anything on that?
I know. So I have been dealing with our engineer and PGE for the past couple weeks. It is behind schedule because PGE was having some issues related to the undergrounding. That's our critical path, is going to be undergrounding the power lines.
Right.
And right now, what it's looking like is in order to get across the highway and take down these 2 power lines, we're going to have to put in some very significant vaults on both that side of the street over there, kind of behind the digital reader board, and then here on City Hall property. And then when we take it up, we're going to have to put in some other vaults along Main Street. And it's just taken PGE a while. I think they've finally got they're moving along.
Okay,
I don't know. It for sure, we will not be starting mid-July like we thought we would, because we do not have the final plans from PGE, and our engineer can't complete their plans until we have the plans from PGE.
Okay.
PGE is supposed to report to me July 5th with their timeline of when they will get that. And then I will be reporting that to council on their council meeting on July 10th. So we'll have a better idea about what the timeline will be, but it will not be starting mid-July.
Just out of curiosity on this one, I know that they're the ones who kind of dropped the ball on this one,
Yep.
so. I think if they drop the ball again, maybe we should look out, see if there's a way to compel them into this.
So that I stepped in and got their higher ups involved, and
Yeah,
that's why
okay.
things are moving. Yes.
Perfect.
All right, that's it for committee business. Moving on to committee reports and comments. I know you guys have gone to some TSP or
Yeah.
hazardous
I have some stuff
mitigation.
to say.
Have you guys had any meetings recently or?
I have some final things to say, but I can wait till everyone else. is
Okay.
done.
Go ahead, John.
A couple things. One, and I've said this before, the amount of data that you can find online is incredible. And I think that budget thing, I think it was 435 pages. My wife was just shaking her head as I'm scrolling through it all. So there's no excuse if you want to go find something out, it's there.
Mhm.
That being said, a lot of it's ishkabibble, didn't understand a lot of that stuff, but the data is there. And the TSP, there's so much information out there. And they so want to hear from the community. And so I was going around in my neighborhood handing out the little flyers to get them to do it. And next thing you know, it shows up in, I think, one of the water bill or something like that. But anyways, so the knowing about the TSP and utilizing that existing resource to help drive change in our neighborhoods, it would be a real efficient way to go about doing that. A different topic is, and I don't know if this is making it an agenda item or what, but I'm very, very, very interested in going to work on our advisory input regarding the ordinance, regarding homeless or whatever it is that we come up with. What are our goals? What what we acknowledge, what we want. I understand the need to keep it as vague as possible, to give discretion to the professionals that are going to actually deal with it. But we've got to have an idea of what we want to achieve with what we're coming up with. And so working on that as a group, I'd really like to see that. We've done a lot of stuff on traffic and it's been important. But, here's the other side of the committee, the public safety stuff, and I'd like to spend some formal time on that.
Sounds good.
Can I make a comment on the TSP? The survey is closed, but if you want to submit comment, you can email it to planning@cityofestacada.org and they will include it in the comment, even though the survey is now closed.
Great.
You asked about the hazardous and mitigation committee that Brandy and I are
Right.
members on, and we haven't had I think we've had 2 meetings so far. And it's really a good committee. I mean, I'm learning a bunch in there. So I'm not gonna have a whole lot, because I've got stacks and stacks of stuff that I could go over, but that's gonna take hours. But just to kind of touch on a few things, some of the things that we're trying to do on that committee is rank what hazards are most perilous to us right now. And I think we had 10 things that were listed. And from the last study, the last time this was done, some of those have moved. I think wildfires was not number 1. But now that we've had the one in 2020, it's now number 1. But they looked at wildfires, earthquakes, winter storms, extreme heat, drought, landslides, windstorms, floods, and volcanoes. So those are kind of just some of the things that we're touching on, and we got to rank, the infrastructure here. What are the critical facilities that need to be protected with each one of those? I mean, what could be affected? So there's a lot of thought process that goes into it, but it's moving along, and I think it's a good thing that Brandy and I are on that committee, because I really feel it really ties into the traffic and public safety aspect. So maybe later on down the line, Brandy and I can maybe let me just throw it on Brandy. Brandy can address us more and tell you what we've been discussing in that committee. Because again, I think it would have great input with the committee members we have here. Now, granted, we represent that, but we're only 2 voices where there's 7 or 8 of us. So we can tell you what we've learned, what they're saying, get your input so we can take it back and, just have a better voice on that committee.
Yeah.
So,
I agree with that.
Yeah, if you want to put that, because I'm in charge of that.
yes, she does a great job too.
Yeah, if you want to put that on a future agenda item, let me know. The timeline for that, I just learned today, because I thought it was going to be like September that it was going to be approved, is not until much later. So if you want to put it on your, like, your September meeting, we could put it on your September meeting. You guys can go through the draft and we can look at it and discuss it.
Sure.
That'd be good.
Because it is now looking like it will go to the county in probably October, and then it won't even go to approval from the city council until after we hear back from FEMA. So we're looking at like January.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to, for bringing that to address this group before that takes place, just in case they have some feedback, and I know they will, that we
Yeah.
could use in our next meeting with you guys. So.
Yeah,
I
it
think
would be good to know when the next one is so that we can do that too. It would be great to have all these voices with us when we're there because, we're kind of the underdogs in that group a little bit. So I would like to have a bigger voice to come in and be like, hey, this is what the whole committee wants to put in here. It's not just the two of us.
Mhm.
So yeah, if we could have like a timeline, set that up and figure out.
Yeah, we don't have any more scheduled meetings
Yeah.
for the advisory committee for the hazard mitigation. We have the draft prepared. We just have community outreach meetings. Now, if we see a significant change on what we have in the information, then we would hold another advisory committee meeting. But so far, what we've seen is the things that we expected to hear, like, wildfire is the #1 hazard. I don't think anybody's surprised at that. They want to see evacuation planning, which is also our #1 project. And I don't think anybody's surprised at that. So, but if you guys want to hold a meeting and I can come go over it with you, and then if you have input that you want to take back, if it's significantly different than anything that's in our plan, we can take it back and have another advisory committee meeting.
Yeah, I like that. I have some stuff before you finish. If you're good.
I guess we're all done with the committee reports. We can do final comments. Brandy?
Okay, yeah.
you wanna
I got
start
some
off?
stuff. Sure. Okay, let me see if I can. So last night I tried to talk and I lost all my thoughts. So, I just want to talk a little bit about, what happened last night and what I saw and what I think for us we can do to help with all this stuff going on. It was very open. I mean, it was very obvious, the meeting that was happening last night. The community was very heavily here. I mean, they were flooding out the doors. It was 60 something, 67 people in here, and more online. And then there were 44 online, and then there are people outside too. It was packed. And I hear a lot of stuff online. I see a lot of things online, but I think that it's important for the community to show up in person and tell their representatives what they want. And they did that last night. You hear a lot of things online where they're saying that's not the only voice in town. And we know that. I mean, I think everybody understands that. But when you're given the opportunity to address your representatives and you show up, it means so much. And to see the community come together again and, basically say, these are our representatives. This is what we want from you. It was really powerful to see. Does everybody agree with what happened? No. And that's part of being a part of a community. But to see the community come out and actually be here was great. And I hope that that continues for non-crazy events and for normal meetings. I would love to see people show up to our meetings too. Thank you, Carolyn, for being here.
Thank you, Carol.
Our meetings as well, and be involved in what's going on. Because I think there's a lot of disinformation out there. There's a lot of, and I hate that word, but there's a lot of rumors. There's a lot of things out there that people think is going on that's not really going on. You hear a lot of things like our mayor makes 6-figure salary doing this. Our mayor's a volunteer. All of us are volunteers. And to be involved, to be fully involved in the process, I think helps make our community stronger. I think from our standpoint, a safety standpoint, public safety, I do want to work on this issue and figure out a way to guide our council in doing an ordinance that would be legal, but also match what our community is asking for. I think our community is very clear in what they want, and it's not I want to be clear on this. It is not inhumane what they said last night. That was not about being inhumane or not having a compassionate heart. Like John said earlier, there's been a lot of money thrown at this problem. There's been a lot of things thrown at this problem and it doesn't work. There's something better out there. And maybe Estacada can be a beacon for that. If we all work together and try to find that answer of what's a better solution than just throwing money at the problem and engaging in the same thing over and over again. It's obviously not working. And our community said, we're not for that. So I encourage all of us to think about that this month of things that we can bring back to help advise the council. I know we're an advisory committee, but I would hope that with the work we put in, like we did on Main Street, that it would have a good effect on the council and talk to people that can help us figure this out. It's important. It's obviously important. And Oregon is having some troubles and I hope that Estacada can stay strong. Otherwise, thank you everyone for being here. I think it was just really impressive to see. I hope we see more of that. I really, really do. So thank you guys. Thank you, Chief Mendoza. Thank you, my husband, for being here. Thank you, Elena. You're awesome. And that's it.
Excellent. Anyone else have anything? No? Okay, I want to reiterate everything that Brandy said. I was extremely impressed with all the veterans in the community that came out and spoke last night. Definitely homelessness is something that is prevalent in the veteran community, and suicide prevention is something that we always try to counter every year. Be the one is something that is the motto for the American Legion. But I'm probably thinking last year, this year, next couple of years, but definitely trying to connect with everyone here in town and trying to get everyone where they need to go and the support that they need. Last night, my wife and I have been coming to city council meetings for 7 years. And I remember it was the two of us, and it was Counselor Hughes and her husband. And the city council meeting was done at 7:15. And she was like, wow, that's it. Well, now she's on the city council. So bravo to Charity. I definitely, it's a way to go, and she's participating. And last night, I think, was something that was so awesome that I was definitely, it was a good thing. I know, Chief, there was a lot to go through, and you and Peter, there was a lot, but I'm hoping that you appreciated the community coming out and voicing their opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. I always love coming to community meetings and seeing full house. That was great.
Yeah, and I didn't necessarily approve of all the people behind, and I guess that wasn't captured on some of the audio, but it was interesting to say the least. I did talk to Sadie this morning, and she survived that well, and I'm glad that everyone did. And thank you, Carolyn, for coming this evening, speaking. Deputy, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Chief and Councilor Litke and Elena, I appreciate you guys being here, because things go on in town, but they often get overlooked. And I'm glad this committee's here, and glad the city council formed this committee to be the people can come to another committee instead of having to get up in front of the big scary city council and speak. Like last night, I was just hoping I wasn't first. I was like, Sean, don't pick me. Oh man, I was like, but thank you again, everyone. Appreciate it. And if anyone doesn't have anything else, I'll adjourn the meeting.
If you'll
Go ahead, Chief.
allow me,
Absolutely.
my apologies, because I got sidetracked with the ordinance things in my report, and there was something I wanted this
Go
committee to
ahead,
be aware of.
please.
So earlier this month in June, we did have two of our traffic enforcement deputies, motor officers, come into Estacada for the afternoon and worked specifically Shafford, where the stop signs open Shafford, and some other areas, because I know that was a location that was asked for some extra attention. And then also going into the July 4th weekend. As I think all of you know, I'm also in charge of our traffic safety team at the sheriff's office. We're going to be working a traffic mission in the Welch's area. And if I get enough turnout on that Friday, I'm going to divert a couple of them to work 224. We really just want to make a big push going into that holiday weekend and slow people down. And I hope that if we slow them down on their way out, that coming back, that they'll also be slow. So just wanted this committee to be aware of that.
Great. And
Cool.
we did see at least myself, I did see the deputies out on the 224, and then that was all over town and social media that the cops are out.
Yeah.
So-
it's
That
slow
was
down.
cool.
That's what I want to hear.
That was
That's
awesome.
what I want to see.
They want them to come in and to slow things down, and then they rat them out when they come in.
Oh, yeah.
That's for another day. Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. And I'll adjourn the meeting.